I think.
Hello, this is Tony Mong and Kim Olson here with you. We wanted to just take some time and talk with folks about elk hunting here in the Baggs area and maybe answer some of the questions you have and I guess cut down on traffic on our phones, as well as give you a little bit more time to digest things before you give us a call. So anyways, we just kind of wanted to talk through elk hunting right now. This will be specific for elk, and then later on we'll make videos once we get closer for draw, for pronghorn and mule deer as well. But really, we just want to kind of walk through the process, start with kind of one of the questions I get about draw, and especially for non-residents. Obviously residents, we don't have a draw for our preference points or anything like that, but for non-residents, I always get the question, what's it going to take for me to draw a license to hunt in this area? And really it depends on where you're talking about. And in hunt area 21, which is considered a general area, you would be putting in for the general draw, which would allow you to hunt not only hunt area 21, but also hunt area 13 and 15 in this area, as well as across the state. There's general elk areas throughout the state, and you could hunt any of those. So those draws for non-residents, typically with one preference point, and that can always change just based on the number of people putting in, but typically with one preference point, you've got a really good chance of drawing that general area. Without a preference point, the best way to draw is to get into the special draw pool. You have that ability. The license costs a little bit more, but you are almost guaranteed to draw that general license with the special license. So that's one way. Now, if we move to the west and we talk about hunt area 124, it's quite a bit different. It's probably one of the most difficult draws in the state for residents and non-residents right now. So it's going to take quite a few preference points to be able to draw that 124. So just keep that in mind. If you're interested in hunting out there, it's going to take some planning and some buying preference points over the next 8 to 10 years, really, before you'll be able to draw that license. So that's kind of the way that draw works. For residents, it's a over-the-counter license for hunt area 21, and not much of a problem for residents to get out there and hunt. But for non-residents, one preference point or that special license. And I guess talking a little bit about how it is a over-the-counter license, Kim, you want to touch on kind of what we see during the hunting season as far as numbers and how those numbers shift?
Okay, hunter crowding in area 21 can be noticeable, shall we say. So in particular during the rifle season, we get a lot of hunters. We take a lot of hunters in area 21. And it is heavier on weekends. So if you, as a non-resident, if you could plan a hunt that maybe pertained more towards the middle of the week, you would definitely see less pressure. Also, typically, the beginning of the season has much more pressure than later in the season. Some other factors depend upon whether we do a bull season first this year, which we may do again. Likely that a bull season will go first, and then in any elk, and then the cow season. So numbers vary with who wants to hunt what, but be prepared for plenty of people. Archery season, you will see less. Archery season in particular, the weekdays are fairly quiet. You do see more during the weekend again. Also in September, you got to keep in mind that it's fairly nice weather usually, and you still have a lot of people using weekends as their last chance to camp. So you will definitely see more people in the woods, whether they're hunting or not. They might not be, but they will be there.
So one other thing to touch on there is, and I get this from time to time, is that non-residents don't realize that if they draw the license for hunting in that general season, that they have the ability to hunt both archery and rifle. And the way that it's set up right now, archery season runs the whole month of September, and then our rifle season generally starts on October 15th. But if you draw that general license that would allow you to hunt 21 or 13 or 15, all you need to do is purchase that archery stamp along with your conservation stamp, and you can come out here and hunt the entire month of September on an archery type stamp or license. So that's one thing that most folks don't realize. I think we're one of the few states that allow you that much opportunity, but definitely a lot of opportunity out there. When you head out here, a lot of folks plan on camping, and so maybe just what's your take on places to camp up on the forest and what they should be prepared for, I guess.
So you're allowed to camp anywhere on Forest Service and BLM within a certain yardage of I believe it's 300 feet
Yep.
of a road.
Yep.
So the possibilities are literally endless. There's really only one campground on the forest. That is called the Lost Creek Campground. It does have a bathroom, and it had water in the past. Last year that water was shut off, so I can't make any guarantees of what it will be this year. But that is really the only campground that we have. But many other places. No camping on state lands. You may hunt state lands and you can park on state lands, but you can't camp on them. And I think that pretty much there is also, if you wanted something a little bit nicer, there is one campground, a little campsite spot down near Slater, the town of Slater, Colorado. They allow camping there. They also have showers. It's more of almost, dare to say, kind of similar to a KOA type of camp situation. Yeah. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, and the other options for getting stuff for your camping trip are bags. That's one thing folks ask about. Bags will have, they've got a couple of gas stations, a small grocery store that has, your essentials, what you need. There's also a couple of restaurants. There's a processor in town as well in bags that you can take your elk to. They also provide showers. I think they also have some laundry facilities. I may not be completely correct on that. We do have a place in town, a car wash, and he's also working on getting some laundry facilities going there right on the main highway, Highway 70, coming into bags there. So there are some things available in bags. You can always also go north out of the forest up to Rollins, and they've got Walmart, grocery store, all that. So there are some things around for sure.
There's also a place in bags to refill propane.
Yeah. There's you can either do a propane exchange at the general store, or there's also a place just on the north end of town that fills propane tanks called Happy Camper, and that's another option of a camping spot if you don't mind driving a little ways. Happy Camper is a place where you can set up. We also have the Country Inn has some campsites available as well. It's located right there in Bags. So there are also 2 hotels in Bags, the Country Inn and the Cowboy Inn. So there are some options for staying. There's also a hotel in Dixon, the Dixon Motel. So there's a few options, but they usually fill up pretty quick. So either if you're feeling lucky and you're going to draw, you might call before and start to set up those reservations because they do fill up rather quickly. So when we're talking about camping, I guess Kim mentioned, that there's BLM land and there's also Forest Service land, and And I guess maybe we should touch on, where we see the majority of elk in Hunt Area 21. Yeah.
So primarily during the main season, September, always September, and mostly in October, depending on, even if we receive snow, most of the elk are still on the forest. So if you get a good map, a good BLM map that is the Bags BLM map, and you see all that green, that is primarily where our elk will be. It really takes a lot of weather to force the majority of those elk onto BLM grounds and into northern areas. So I would recommend that you concentrate primarily on Forest Service.
Yeah. In the past, when we had kind of higher numbers of elk, we had a few different kind of smaller herds scattered throughout that BLM, but that we've really seen those decrease, and we've seen majority of the elk kind of on Forest Service ground. So that's probably where you want to focus your attention, is on the Forest Service ground. One thing that just popped in my head, we don't have written down though, is the wilderness area that we do have in 21. Residents can hunt that with no restrictions, but non-residents, based on some statutes, are unable to enter the wilderness area without a guide of some sort. Residents have the opportunity to get what is that called, a day or
you could get a resident guide license.
Yeah.
So you would have a resident who could take you in, or otherwise you would have to be with a licensed guide.
Right, and the resident guides can take, I believe, up to 2 people with them, and go into there. Otherwise, that's kind of off limits for non-residents. And so be sure that you know where that is located. It's kind of right in the middle of 21, even goes into 15 some. So something to watch for sure. Another question we get is regarding horses, and we'll kind of tie this also with the question of where can we drive, because our forest, there are quite a few roads, both legal and not legal, on our roads that have been created. And so as far as taking a horse in, unless you're going into the wilderness area, or there's some areas down on the southern end of the forest that you might be able to utilize a horse and ride in. I generally tell folks that horses are great for packing. If you get something down, take your horse in and help you pack it out. But as far as, riding for miles and miles and miles just to hunt off of a horse, there's not a ton of that opportunity out there.
No, we have there's really a lot of roads. So there's a lot of access. And really, we don't have a lot of square mileage that is not roaded in some way, shape, or form that would be ideal for a horse. I'm not including the fact that we've got a lot of timber that's come down in the last several years, and horse travel anymore is becoming rather difficult.
Yeah, and so a couple of questions around that are usually, what is the beetle kill like? What are the issues with that? And then recently we had a fire that went through the area. So what I can say on the beetle kill side of things is that we're at the time period where a lot of the dead standing trees are going to be coming down. So everyone I talk to, I tell them, if there's any kind of wind and you're in any of these stands where you've got a lot of dead trees, I'd get out of there. It's becoming a little bit dangerous up there in some of these places. So just be very aware of your surroundings, and if you've got a bunch of standing dead pine trees around you and you start getting any kind of wind event, it's probably time to pack up and get out of that area. As far as the fire, where do you think we're at? How much damage was done, and do you think it impacted us much? I
don't. The fire actually was a blessing. It will be. It burned primarily in very heavily timbered areas, a lot of downfall, so that was good. It did not carry across the open meadows and such. It didn't even burn that hot across those meadows. So really, it's going to be really a good thing. Even saw some grass growing in it as early as last fall. So it should be a good thing. And didn't really impact us. There were still elk in that area last year.
Yeah, I'd say that I wouldn't even worry about trying to avoid those areas this year. I think if anything, it could be a draw. You get some fresh vegetation growing in there. And again, it was in really rugged country, so if you're willing to get into that country, I think it'll be a benefit to you. So I don't think it's of concern. I don't think I'd avoid the area because of the fire last year. I think it's just going to enhance some of those areas. So I think we'll be pretty good. With that, I guess elk herd, numbers in general, and this is specific to 2017. And so I'd say, over the last several years, our objective has been to decrease numbers of elk in this area. There's other videos from public meetings where I go a bit more into our objective and things like that. So feel free to check out one of my other videos there over season setting meetings or the postseason meetings where I talk about that. So numbers have come down from what they were 5-6 years ago. But we're still seeing good harvest success in these areas as long as the weather cooperates. This year it was pretty warm throughout the season, but elk numbers are down. But I think if you put the time and the effort into hunting this area, there's no reason why you shouldn't harvest. Any other thoughts? Is that?
No, that's pretty fair to say.
Okay. And then as far as bull quality, that's another thing I forgot to write down, but I always get that question. And this is a recreational herd. It does get hunted hard. It's rare to find, the 350-inch class bulls in this area. I will say, though, that we've been getting better bulls over the last several years. We've been seeing bigger bulls come out. And I've seen a lot more 300-inch, bulls coming out of this area. To hold out for the biggest of the big 350 or above is probably not going to work for you in 21, 13 or 15, but you should have opportunity to see some branch antler bulls, quite a few of the, mid 200-inch, bulls running around. I think there's good opportunity for that, but it's not a trophy area. It's not managed for trophy. We have seen some good bulls come out. I've seen as big as 340 and some 350s come out, but it's mainly, getting out. You're going to see elk if you're putting time on the ground, if you're willing to do some hiking and get away from some of the roads that we do have. You can definitely see elk. So we've talked a lot about kind of roads and things and how there's roads that have been established by the Forest Service, and then there's these other roads. How can you tell the difference?
So most of them are not marked, or some are marked. It's hard to say, but people like to pull out markers, so you can't go by that. So what we recommend is the U.S. Forest Service has put out what they call a travel management map, and it is to your benefit to get a hold of that map and follow that map. Last year, we really started to see some enforcement on those roads that have been developed. So you're taking a chance if you were to decide to go down one of those roads that is not on the map. So that's what we recommend. It is available from the Forest Service. That is a great map to have along with the BAGS BLM map. I think those are, between those two maps, you pretty much have everything that you would need.
Yeah. And then, there's not as many land ownership, kind of trespassing issues up on the forest, but if you're hunting the edge of the forest or getting into some of that BLM country, definitely want to look into that GPS chip. It's just a handy tool to have. It requires a GPS unit, a Garmin GPS unit that has a color display, and we actually sell the chip right on our website. But I think it's just so handy to have, right where you're at. But one warning on that, though, is that sometimes those GPS units will show roads especially on the Forest Service, that it says, yeah, this, this is like a 2-track. But if you look on the travel management map, it's actually not a road. So you've got to be very careful when using that GPS unit as your only guide. That's why we recommend getting the travel management map and having the BLM map. That just secures everything. I mean, one of the biggest things that we deal with, or that Kim deals with during hunting season, is trespassing. And a lot of times people are saying, well, I just didn't know it wasn't marked. Well, in Wyoming, it's on the hunter to know where they're at. It's not on the landowner to mark the land. So something to keep in mind as you plan your trip out here. And I know it's an extra expense, but it's one that can save you some headache.
Well worth it.
Yeah.
And the other mentioning that is also, excuse me, fences. A lot of fences in Wyoming do not mark land ownership. They simply mark an allotment. So that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. They think that they've come to a fence and that shows private property, but a lot of times it does not. Fences are built for ease and what works in an allotment in the way that cattle or sheep drift. So you can't go by a fence line either most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can be very confusing. That's why that GPS unit, you've got it in your hand. It shows you where you're at, and it shows you where you're at in relation to all the different land ownership. So it's just a super tool to have. Switch gears a little bit. When you're coming out, we get a lot of questions of, once you harvest an animal, what do you got to bring out? And that kind of goes along with having horses and being able to pack out, because otherwise you're carrying it on your back. What do you need to bring out?
So you're required by law to bring out all 4 quarters, meaning the hindquarters, both hindquarters, both front shoulders. And that goes clear down to the knee and the hock on those legs. The other things you're required to bring out of the back strap, that's the top piece of meat along the backbone, and what we call the tenderloin, which is the inside piece of meat. It's a much smaller piece of meat, but it is the best piece of meat. The tenderloin on the inside along that backbone. So that's what you're required to bring out. If you want to bring out neck meat and rib meat, you may, but you need to bring out all 4 quarters, the back straps, and the tenderloin. Now, many times, and not so much with elk, but we have people who say, well, I shot it in the front shoulder and the front shoulder is no good. Doesn't matter if you think that is no good. You still are required to bring that out. You make that decision once you take that meat home, but you don't make that decision in the field. So if you're going through a check station and you get stopped, of course, and you don't have a front shoulder because you think it was blown up, that right there could warrant a citation because you have not met the qualification for what you're supposed to bring out.
Right. Yes, and that's another thing, I think. Trespassing and then not bringing out what you should are probably some of the top 2 around here, anyways, that I know that Kim deals with as far as violations. So it's something definitely to keep in mind. We'll touch just briefly on season structure. We still haven't gone through our season setting process. But what it's going to be very similar to what it was last year, I believe. We may shorten some of the general cow season. We may change the length of the bull season at the front end, but we're still probably going to hang on to the bull season at the very start of the season, just because, again, it's another weekend opener and trying to help cut down on pressure that first weekend. So what you can probably see is 3, 4, 5 days of bull only, and then going into an any elk, and then into a general cow. We do at this point plan to still have the type 6 licenses, the cow calf licenses. We've got somewhat of a winter going on, although it takes a really, really bad winter to kill elk. So we're not too concerned right now with a lot of die-off from elk. That may change over the next month or 2. Just keep checking back on that. But so we'll have those licenses. The Type 7 license, we We've got a few of those. Those were created to deal with some damage issues, which have kind of subsided a little bit since we have been decreasing numbers. So there are a few of those type 7s that are still available. So kind of maybe wrap up with, well, one warning, I guess. This last year we had quite a few bears in camp. We dealt more with bears in camp this year than the 7 years that I've been here. And had a couple incidences where there was an interaction. The bear ended up dead because the campers felt threatened. So maybe talk, if you get a bear in camp, what should you do?
Okay, well, definitely in Area 21, expect bears. We have a lot of bears in Area 21. We harvest a lot of bears every year, but we still have plenty of bears. So that can be expected. So what we need to do is we need to be real careful in keeping a clean camp. We don't have grizzly bears in this country, and so it tends to make people be a little lax in their habits. But we need to keep in mind those same habits. We need to keep coolers put away actually inside vehicles, inside campers, inside trucks or horse trailers where a bear can't get at them. Just closing a cooler is not going to keep a bear out. All foods and of those garbage bags, anything that could attract a bear needs to be put up and put inside vehicles so it cannot be reached. We do still live by the saying, a fed bear is a dead bear. Unfortunately, if they receive human food, they catch on really quickly and are smart and wise, and they learn fast. So we try to keep that at a distance. The other thing, of course, is elk meat. Once people start getting elk and deer and start bringing it into their camps, again, it needs to be put at a very high height or put again in the back of something, a horse trailer, something somewhere where it cannot be accessed by a bear. The one bear that we had last year, he hit several camps, hit a cooler, dug lunch meat out of the cooler, and then got some of the elk shoulders that were hanging from a tree. He just went from camp to camp to camp helping himself. So we need to do a much better job and be prepared. One of those ways to be prepared is bear spray. There's nothing that works better than bear spray. So I like to say if we can train a bear unintentionally to come into our camp, I think we can train them just as easily maybe to leave our camps. And the best way to do that is bear spray. So if you feel threatened, having a can of bear spray with you is a great option for both you and the bear. Great non-lethal method. It works great in camps. If you've got a bear that is coming into your camp and he's getting that close, then yeah, bear spray is a great option.
So one thing we ran into is that once a bear started to kind of come around camps, people didn't know what to do. And really the first thing, putting all your food away, things like that, trying to keep your camp as clean as possible. But really, you should get a hold of Game and Fish. Let us know that this is occurring so that we have an idea what's going on. We've got methods. We've got traps and things if it becomes a problem that we can help get rid of that bear. So if you have an incident, you can get a hold of us through the hotline. Or locally you can get a hold of us, and I'll give you our numbers here at the end of the broadcast here if you have follow-up questions. But definitely get a hold of us so that we can help kind of deal with the situation so that it doesn't end with a dead bear, so it doesn't end with anybody being injured. And so as soon as we can know about that, we can start to help and work on that. But number one is clean camp. People get kind of lazy up here because we don't have the grizzly bears, but again, a clean camp's going to keep that issue from coming up. So keep that in mind when you come out. And even when you're hiking around the woods, if you get an animal down and you have to leave it overnight, just be aware that there's bears around and make a lot of noise coming back into that carcass. And black bears typically are pretty afraid of humans. but still something to definitely keep in mind. So that's really all we had. We hope that we answered some of your questions at least. I'm sure we didn't answer all of them, but hopefully we hit some of the main points. If you'd like to talk with us more, you can get a hold of Kim at 307-383-2160 is office number there. My number is 307-380-8283. Feel free to give us a call and discuss more if you like. But hopefully this gave you at least a basis to start with, and from there we can help you as best as we can. Any other?
No. Good luck on the draw.
Yeah, good luck, and hope to see you out here this fall. Take care.